The drifter came at sunset, his boots heavy with dust and years of silence. The desert stretched endless around him, cracked earth, dying sagebrush, and the faint smell of smoke carried by a cooling wind. He had been walking for 3 days since his horse died, guided only by instinct and the distant whisper of drums. He had no home, no gun, and nothing left but weariness. The Apache village appeared like a mirage, smoke rising from distant fires, the promise of warmth against the endless emptiness. He only wanted a place to rest, just one quiet night away from ghosts. When he reached the outskirts of the camp, the evening fires burned low. The wind carried the scent of roasted corn and pine smoke. Shadows of women and children flickered across hide tents, moving like memories. He hesitated, knowing his kind wasn't welcome in most places anymore. The frontier had taught him that strangers carried danger as easily as dust. But his knees trembled, and pride could not fill an empty stomach. So with slow steps he approached the firelight, his eyes down, his heart heavy with unspoken stories. 3 women stood outside a lodge near the center of camp. Their faces were strong, proud, and touched by sorrow. The eldest, with streaks of gray in her braids, watched him without fear. The second crossed her arms, her gaze sharp, guarded. The youngest stood slightly behind, her eyes dark pools of curiosity. The drifter tipped his hat. "I seek no trouble," he said softly. "Only a place to rest till morning." For a moment, silence stretched thin between them, like a thread ready to break. The eldest woman finally spoke, her voice steady as stone. "You bring no weapons?" He lifted his empty hands. "None left to carry." She studied him a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "Then you will find no harm here." She gestured toward the fire. "Sit, eat." Relief swept through him like rain after drought. He lowered himself beside the flames, accepting a bowl of stew handed by the younger woman. The warmth filled him, but so did something else, a quiet sense of being seen, as if he'd stepped into someone's dream. As the fire crackled, laughter drifted from nearby lodges. The air carried rhythm, the steady beat of drums and low hum of voices singing prayers older than time. He watched the 3 women move with unspoken grace, tending the fire, whispering in their native tongue. Their silence toward him wasn't cold, it was measured, cautious, deliberate. He felt their eyes on him, watching, measuring as though he had wandered into a story already written by fate. The youngest met his gaze once, then quickly looked away, her cheeks flushed like embers. Night deepened, painting the sky in rivers of starlight. The drifter leaned back, exhaustion pulling at him. The eldest woman, called Noya by the others, brought him a blanket woven with symbols of her people. "Sleep by the fire," she said. "The desert grows cold and the coyotes are hungry." He thanked her, his voice rough. As he lay down, the crackle of fire mixed with the whisper of wind and distant songs. His mind faded between dreams and memory of places lost, faces gone, and roads that led nowhere. But even in that half-sleep, he sensed something. The sound of footsteps near him, soft as breath. He opened one eye and saw the youngest woman kneeling near the fire, her gaze studying him closely. She seemed to be tracing something in the dirt, symbols, perhaps prayers. When she noticed him awake, she whispered, "My name is Cinta." He nodded faintly. "Daniel," she smiled slightly. "You walk like a man carrying ghosts." His chest tightened. "Maybe I am one." She said nothing, only returned to her symbols before vanishing into her lodge. He woke before dawn to the smell of rain in the air. The camp was still, blanketed in mist. For the first time in years, he felt no urge to move, no pull of the endless road. Something about this place, the way the earth breathed, the stillness of morning, felt like forgiveness. When Noya approached with coffee brewed over the embers, she said quietly, "You sleep with peace." "Few men do." He stared into the cup, steam rising between them. "Maybe peace found me by mistake," she smiled faintly. "Peace never makes mistakes. It only waits until you're ready." As the sun began to rise, golden light poured over the camp. Children laughed in the distance, their small hands chasing dogs and dust alike. The drifter watched them, his heart twisting. He had once dreamed of family, of roots, but war and whiskey had stolen that dream long ago. Cinta joined him by the fire, her hair loose in the wind. "You're not like the others who pass through," she said softly. He shrugged. "I've got nothing left to take." She looked at him, eyes deep and unreadable. "Then maybe that's what makes you worth keeping." The words unsettled him. He wasn't a man used to kindness, much less from strangers. He had expected suspicion, maybe anger. But this strange, calm acceptance felt heavier than any judgment. As the morning grew brighter, he saw the way the three women spoke among themselves, their glances often drifting toward him. Something in their eyes had changed, curiosity turning into decision. He didn't know what they whispered about, but the feeling settled deep in his bones. Somehow his journey had crossed into theirs, and nothing about it felt accidental anymore. By the time the sun stood high, he realized he had been given more than food and shelter. He had been given notice by three women who carried the same silence he did, each with their own ghosts, their own griefs. He wondered if they saw in him the same emptiness that mirrored their own. That evening, as the drums returned to the night and the stars began to shimmer, he lay awake, listening to their voices beyond the lodge walls, soft, low, and filled with something that sounded like promise. He didn't know it yet, but destiny was circling close. When dawn broke, the air felt different, thicker, alive, humming with something unseen. The sound of drums rolled through the valley, low and steady, echoing against the red cliffs. Daniel woke slowly, blinking into the rising light. The camp was stirring, figures moving with quiet purpose. Smoke curled from the lodge fires, carrying the scent of cedar and sage. He sat up, heart heavy yet calm, unaware that his life was about to change forever. Across the clearing, three women stood together, dressed in red and silver, their faces marked with sacred ash that shimmered in the morning sun. The eldest, Noya, stepped forward, her braid glinting like dark copper. "You came with peace in your hands," she said softly, "and 3 dreams have chosen you." Daniel frowned, unsure if he'd heard her right. The drums pulsed like a heartbeat, steady, ancient. "Chosen," he echoed. Noya's eyes held centuries in them. "Before you came, our dream spoke of a man who walks without shadow, whose sorrow will heal the fire within our home." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with reverence. "We did not believe until you arrived." Daniel rose slowly, dust clinging to his coat. "Mom, I'm just a drifter." "I didn't come to heal anyone." The second widow, Lena, spoke next, her tone gentler but firm. "You came with no weapon, no greed, no demand. That is not nothing." She stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. 3 winters have passed since our husbands fell in battle. Our fires have grown cold. But last night, the spirits stirred again. He looked around the camp, at the faces watching, the stillness that held its breath. "I think you've mistaken me for someone better." The youngest, Cinta, took a hesitant step forward. Her painted hands trembled slightly as she reached for him. "Our people say the earth does not send strangers, it sends answers." Her eyes found his. "You are not here by accident." Daniel's breath caught. Something deep inside him shifted, a memory flickering like an ember. His wife's laughter, long buried beneath dust and war. He pulled back, whispering, "I've already lost one life. I can't live another that isn't mine." Cinta's expression softened. "Maybe this one is." The wind carried her words like a prayer. The drums stopped. Silence fell heavy as snowfall. Noya lifted a bundle wrapped in deer hide and unrolled it before him, a blanket embroidered with 3 interlocking spirals. "These are the marks of our vow," she said. "The path of 3 hearts joining one fire." He stared, unsure whether to laugh or weep. "You mean marriage?" Noya nodded solemnly. "Yes, you gave no promise, yet gave us peace. We offer you place, warmth, name, and home." The villagers murmured blessings, their eyes full of expectation. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. He had wandered through deserts, but never into this. He turned away, pacing, struggling to breathe. "You don't even know me," he muttered. Lena's voice followed him, calm and certain. "We know the way you looked at the stars last night, as if you'd forgotten they were still there." Her words froze him in place. she continued. "A man who still looks for light is not a man of danger." He stopped, staring down at his hands. They trembled, not from fear, but from the sudden weight of being seen after so long. For years he had been invisible. Now, 3 pairs of eyes refused to let him fade. The sun rose higher, golden light pouring over the valley. The tribe began to gather, encircling the fire where Daniel stood. It felt like judgment and grace woven together. Noya stepped closer, her voice low. "We do not bind you in chains. The choice is yours. Stay, and you will never walk hungry again. Leaf, and the wind will remember your kindness." He swallowed hard, throat dry as dust. "And if I stay?" Cinta smiled faintly. "Then you will no longer be alone." The simplicity of it struck him harder than any bullet ever had. He looked around at the camp, the laughter of children, the smell of earth after dew, the hum of life untouched by greed or war. He realized this place wasn't haunted by the past, it was healed by it. His whole life had been a search for rest, but rest had never meant belonging. Until now. Slowly he knelt before the 3 women. "I don't know what I can give," he said hoarsely. "But whatever's left of me, it's yours to share." The crowd exhaled as if a storm had passed. Noya smiled for the first time, a smile like sunrise. The ceremony was simple, but it carried the weight of eternity. They placed the woven blanket over his shoulders, the spirals glinting with red and gold thread. Lena sprinkled ashes from their sacred fire over his hands. "You came to us empty," she whispered. "Now you are filled with our name." The people sang, low, haunting, beautiful. Cinta placed a carved pendant around his neck, shaped like an arrowhead split in 2. "You walk the path between worlds," she said. "Now you walk with us?" Tears blurred his vision as the wind rose, scattering petals and ash alike. As night fell, the celebration quieted into laughter and song. Children danced around the fire, and the scent of roasted corn and venison filled the air. Daniel sat between the 3 women, each in quiet reflection. Cinta leaned her head on his shoulder, her voice a whisper. "Do you still think you came by accident?" He shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "I think I've been walking here all my life." The stars spread across the sky like silver dust. In that moment, the man who had nothing became part of something ancient, something stronger than blood or name. Later, as the fire burned low and the camp drifted to sleep, Daniel rose and looked out across the valley. The wind was cool, the moonlight soft against the rocks. For the first time in years, the road no longer called to him. He had found his ending, not in gold or revenge, but in peace and love freely given. Behind him, the 3 women slept close to the fire, their faces calm, their hearts entwined. Daniel smiled faintly. "Thank you," he whispered to the night. Somewhere in the distance a coyote howled, not in mourning, but in blessing.